Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of What's Up with Nick and Chuck. I'm Chuck Schwarz. I'm the East Coast Business Development Director here at HUI.
And I'm Nick Ralph, the West Coast Business Development Director.
Today we have Greg Manversi with us. Greg is one of our design engineers on the MBD or Medical Business Development team. Thanks for joining us, Greg.
You bet.
Today we're going to be talking about packaging, and Greg's going to specifically speak about how we develop packaging for medical cart solutions. And one of the things that I'd like to start out the question with Greg on is, in the development process, how does packaging become a factor in the whole grand scheme of developing a cart?
Well, packaging should be thought of right up front. Unfortunately, many times it's forgotten about until the very end and the cart is developed. And then it's like, well, the cart is pretty expensive already. Now we got to add packaging too. So it tends to be a shock or a surprise at the end, and that's unfortunate. But if you think about it in the beginning, it helps a lot.
What are the primary and secondary goals when packaging is taken into consideration?
Well, to me, the primary goal of any packaging is to protect the product that's packaged within the packaging. And secondary, it's got to be cost effective and easy for our assembly folks to use and package, and easy for the end user to unpackage the cart.
What about when it comes to how carts ship? What has been your experience with fully assembled versus disassembled?
Well, there's a lot of variation there. When a cart is fully assembled, you're definitely looking at it's going to be on an individual pallet. It's going to have potentially a lot of pieces to hold the cart in place. When it's disassembled, there's again a lot of different ways you can go. You can do boxes within boxes. You can do foam cutouts within the box that hold the individual pieces. And some of that is great because it's fast and easy for assembly to do, and it error-proofs the assembly so they don't miss parts, because if there's an open spot where the part's supposed to be, well, we're missing something, right? Mm-hmm. It's very a visual indicator, but it's also more expensive. So if your volume isn't there, it can be pretty costly and maybe won't work for your project.
Mm-hmm. So could you explain some of your experience in the opportunities for using reusable packaging?
Sure, reusable packaging is great. It spreads out that cost, and you can probably get away with using a more expensive pack because you're using it multiple times, so you get more bang for your buck, basically. Mm-hmm. So if it's going from your cart manufacturer to your medical device company, and then used again to go to the final customer, that's great. That's 3 uses. Potentially, it could even come back from there and go back to the medical cart manufacturer.
What are some of the materials that companies should take into consideration when we're having conversations around packaging?
Typically at HUI, we try and use a standard pack that is mostly made up of cardboard. Cardboard's pretty inexpensive. It's easy to dispose of or recycle. But outside of cardboard, there's definitely foam products, foam blocks with cutouts, expanding foam in place type things, which isn't the most environmentally friendly. Like a lot of European countries, I don't think you can use it at all. But the foam, heat-treated wood products, especially if we're shipping internationally, but plywood crates versus cardboard boxes, or a combination of all of those things.
So when it comes to the packaging, what kind of testing do our customers and OEM device manufacturers need to take into consideration when dealing with packaging?
It really depends on the size of the product and how it's going to be shipped. There's a whole array of ISDA testing standards that it'll be tested to, whether it's going UPS or FedEx ground versus individually palletized on a truck, and whether it's 300 pounds or 10 pounds, right? So there's a different test for each of those, and there's multiple other options as far as environmental considerations, temperature, humidity that go along with that. So to some degree you can pick and choose, but in other cases it's defined by your product.
So when it comes to packaging design, Greg, what are some of the things that you've learned along the way as our viewers are considering packaging products, what are some of the things that you've learned that you've implemented and that they could potentially look at?
One of the main things with our carts is we've noticed we need to have cushioning or shock absorption for the casters, or have the cart basically suspended off of the casters. Otherwise, casters end up getting damaged or broken if it gets jostled around too much. And there's a lot of ways you can accomplish that. Like I mentioned, our cardboard packs will have a buildup in the bottom that actually raises the whole cart up off of the casters. We've also used in some wood crates where there'll be a foam insert within the base of the crate where the casters each individually sit on, and even some shock absorption products built into the skid. So there's ways to do that, but otherwise we do see some caster damage if you don't account for that. Some of the other things we've learned along the way, like I mentioned before, the flat packing, using those individual cutouts is great, like I mentioned, for error proofing and for assembly, and it's fast, it's efficient, but like I said, it is more expensive.
So kind of stemming off of the package testing that you had mentioned earlier, what are some other options that companies have to identify product that may have either been mishandled or were introduced to some outside forces that typically it wouldn't undergo during normal transport?
Yeah, it seems like even if your cart passes the test, it may not account for mishandling by truck drivers, or if your product is going and getting cross-docked multiple times on the way across the country. It definitely can add up. Some of the ways to mitigate that risk is using a dedicated truck, where the truck gets loaded and sealed with a number when it leaves the manufacturer. You can check it when it gets there. Another option that's out there, there are indicator labels that turn color based on shock or tip or tilt. If the cart was hit or tipped over or anything like that. So it's a very fast visual indicator for the person receiving the cart to say, hey, there's something wrong. The cart indicator is red. We should probably open it up and check for damage right away. And then you can get that shipping claim filed before it's too late.
So speaking of shipping claims, so when a client does have a product that they receive damage, what's the typical steps that a client should take when they receive something and they see it's damaged or could be damaged?
It varies to some degree, but it really goes back to working with that shipper immediately and rejecting the shipment or filing that claim to collect the damage insurance or whatever.
Anything else that we've done from a creative standpoint to help in mishandling of products that are packaged?
One thing we have noticed, like I mentioned with the truck drivers mishandling things, we used to put a yellow crush cone basically on top of the cart saying, do not double stack. Well, products would get to our customers and that cone would be flattened. So one product in particular, we took and redesigned the packaging to be a rooftop peak all the way along, so it appears that there's parts there and it's a lot more difficult to stack something on top of it. So far that's been pretty successful.
The top 3 closing thoughts that you would share with our viewers on packaging.
Well, number one, don't wait till the end to think about packaging. Make sure it's part of the project from the beginning. And, be ready to know if you're doing assembled, disassembled, some of each even, but plan to develop that packaging right away. The next one would be good packaging can be expensive, but it might be justified in reduced errors from error proofing, or if your volume is high enough to justify the foam, or just reduced assembly time, faster, more efficient. Lastly, have your pack tested. Make sure your product's going to be safe in the shipping process, but also be prepared to do those additional steps of shock watch or shock indicators or tilt indicators, or even dedicated trucks is probably one of the safest things.
Right.
And maybe one other thing to add to that would be is to just don't rely on one package testing and to last a lifetime, right? Because sometimes package testing, you might want to redo that 3-4 years from now, because obviously environments change and how we handle things change.
Or if the design of the cart changes,
Yep.
or if something else changes within the packaging.
Yep.
Well, thanks a lot today, Greg. Really appreciate your feedback on some of the packaging instructions. If you guys have any further questions for myself, Nick, or Greg in regards to any of the packaging information that we discussed here today, feel free to let us know. We'll happily address those questions for you. Or if you have any other topics that you'd like us to discuss further on future episodes of What's Up with Nick and Chuck, let us know. Thanks a lot.
Take care, everybody.
Bye.